Equalities and Diversity Group, a special meeting to go through the budget mandates and the proposals for the budget year 2015 to 16. I know that Delia wants to make some opening remarks, please, and then as soon as you've done that, we'll go straight into the presentation on the budget proposals and the financial situation facing Monmouthshire by Cabinet Member Phil Murphy for Finance. After that, there will be a general discussion. If I could ask that, obviously we are the Equalities and Diversity Group, so we should be referring ourselves to the Equalities Act and those protected characteristics about how it impacts on the groups that we're interested in and how we can, if there are any negative effects that you can see, suggestions and discussion on how we mitigate those. So I'll start with opening remarks from Delia, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the chairman of the Abergavenny Action 50+, and I just wanted to say on behalf of the group how much we appreciate the invitation to come this afternoon and to be involved in the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, just to introduce quickly, Cabinet Member for Finance, Phil Murphy, to my left. To my right is Alan Burkitt, who is Monmouthshire's Equalities and Welsh Language Officer. In front of me, you probably heard this phrase before, but I'll say it again for anybody who hasn't, the surfboard in front of me. Rianne, yep. Hello. Abby, who is the Communications Officer for Monmouthshire and works within community engagement. And then to the furthest to my right would be Will McLean, who's our Community and Engagement Chief Officer. I think that's everybody. When we're actually speaking on the microphone, the camera will go to you after the presentation. If you could just say your name for the benefit of anybody that might be watching now or in the future. Thank you. So if I'll just pass over to Councillor Murphy to go through the budget proposals.
Yes, thank you, Phil. Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming along to this budget presentation. It's the same one that I've been doing around the county. We thought it was important that you all heard that, give you the same opportunity as everybody else who's been to the public engagement sessions to comment. There is an opportunity at the end for us to have a discussion and for you to raise any questions that you want. But if somebody is keen to ask a question as I go along, please stop me and ask it. We'll discuss that and then move on. That's one of the great benefits of a PowerPoint presentation. In theory, I can't forget where I was. Can I just ask you all to check now to make sure that your buttons are off, because that one's on there? That's lovely, thanks. Everybody else done? Okay. Right, well, as Phil said, I'm Phil Murphy. I'm Cabinet Member for Resources. And at this time of the year, I seem to spend all my time going round to various groups, including public meetings, just setting out the scene, if you like, as to where we are with the budget proposal so far, give you a bit of a background as to where the finance comes from, what the size of the problem is, and then we'll go through as to how we propose to tackle it. Give you the opportunity of assessing how it affects you. And then, as I say, if you haven't asked any questions as I go along, we'll have a look at it at the end. And I don't think it would have escaped anybody's notice that times are tough. It's not rhetoric. This is not local government trying to get everybody used to the idea that, oh, poor us, we're having all our funding cut. No, this is real. This is the hardest budget round since the Second World War for all of us. We're not just talking Monmouthshire here. We're talking all local authorities everywhere. And of course, it's not just this country. It's abroad as well. But in particular, we're here to look at Monmouthshire, and let's concentrate on how it actually affects us. And the biggest problem that we've got is that in the past we've always been given indicative settlements. When they give us our provisional and then our final settlement for the year, they give us an indication as to what we're likely to get in the following year and the year after that. Last year, all authorities, and we certainly were one of them, made a lot of decisions that perhaps we wouldn't have made if we'd have had accurate information from Welsh Government at that time. And it wasn't until June of 2014 that the new minister wrote to us and she said, forget everything you've been told, it's not going to happen. It's going to be much worse than that, so hard luck really. We were told that we would be cut for 15-16 by 1.5%. We didn't believe that, and we built 2.3% into our calculations. It turned out to be 4.3% cut, and that added another £2 million to what we were already working on. And then they gave us the final settlement, and that took another 62,000 off us as well. So thank you very much. It just adds to the challenge. And principally what's happened is that the Welsh Government decided that they were going to take a load of money away from local government and give 200 million this year to the NHS, 240 next year. There's another 70 million that they've just had as a windfall because 113 million came in from central government in Westminster. And all of that's gone into the NHS. I don't have a problem with that, as long as the NHS use it wisely, and I'm quite certain they will. Then that's good. We need people to support the NHS. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that an awful lot of the work that's done by local authorities is aimed at stopping people getting into the clutches of the NHS. The support that the elderly population in particular, and children as well, get from social services is all designed to look after people in their own homes, to provide the services and prevent you from having to be hospitalised. One of the big problems is that if this goes on for much longer, then those services won't be able to be delivered and people will fall on the NHS. So the policy seems to be self-defeating. So yes, there is a severe and deteriorating outlook, and although there's that 500 million I've just been speaking about, 900 million has been taken off local authorities. So it is a real problem. We've all got to find better ways of delivering service. So all of this that I'm going through this afternoon is all about how we're going to raise more money when we can, how we're going to deliver services differently and save money by doing it. But we can't just keep reinventing ourselves. We will get to the stage where it's just plain money that is going to provide a service. So the savings for the coming year, 15-16, we have to find £5.8 million worth of either savings or additional income. And there's another 10 million waiting to be found over the next 3 years, assuming that the cuts for each of those years are the same level as we've just experienced with regard to 15-16. Again, as I said, there's no indicative settlement this time, so who knows? I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to make these decisions if nobody tells us what basis we're making them on. And all of that is on top of the 20 million that we've already found since 11-12. So where you will have noticed a service over the last couple of years might have changed with regards to your own personal circumstances. This is why, we can't just do it because we used to do it. If we continue with that line, well then what will happen is it won't happen. If we don't adapt, if we don't find different ways of delivering the service, there will be no service. So how does that pan out in Wales? How does the funding work? Well, those of you who can see that tiny little blue bar there are looking at the amount of funding that Monmouthshire gets compared to the 22 authorities in Wales. We get just over £1,000 per head in government support. to run Monmouthshire. Blythe Gwent, for instance, I only choose them because they're the other end of the scale, no other reason. They get an extra £560 pounds per person. So we only get 2/3 of what they get to run the same services. And when you look at that in terms of how it affects your council tax bill, here's Monmouthshire. We're the same as the Welsh average. So the efficiencies that you've already experienced throughout the last couple of years have led us, despite the lowest funding of any authority in Wales, to keep our costs to the stage where we haven't had to pass it on in council tax. As opposed to, and I use Blythe Gwent again, because they're the top of the tree, look how much a Bandy house pays extra to Bandy in Monmouthshire. You know, they get more money, but they also take more money in Bandy. So we need to look at where our money comes from, and we get 53% of our money from central government grants, or from Welsh government grants. 20% of it is non-domestic rates redistribution. So what we do is we collect the business rates in, because that's what NNDR is. It all goes down to Cardiff, they throw it up in the air, and the bit that lands in the Monmouthshire pot comes back to us. The rest of the money has to come from you. It comes from council tax and any funds that we can raise elsewhere. We look for every grant that's going, we look at all the services we provide, and where we're able to charge, we do. Every authority, and we're no exception, has to have priorities. But of course the problem is that if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So you have to say, well, where are we going to concentrate our efforts? Where will the bulk of our support go? Education obviously is a big one. The support of vulnerable people and creating enterprise and therefore job opportunities are our three main stated aims. That's what we will try and do above everything else. But the problem is, if you are faced with a situation like we are, and you say, right, well, we can't touch education, you know, that's sacrosanct, you mustn't touch that, then all the rest get a cut of 18%. If we say, well, we can't touch the money that's spent on vulnerable people as well as education, then everything else gets a cut of 31%. At that stage, they won't exist. So there'll be no rubbish collection, no leisure centres, no libraries, no any of the things that you're likely to do. They would disappear on that basis. And clearly, we can't allow that situation to happen. So we listened to people who attended the various events that we put on around the county, and people said, look, we don't care if you charge us a little bit more for things. We don't care if you alter the way you deliver the services. Just make sure that you continue to deliver those services, and as locally as you possibly can. We asked people what they thought about recycling. What about the purple and the pink bags? What about the yellow bags? What about the grey bags? What about all the other bags you've got to do stuff? People say, why have we got so many? Because you're sorting it out for us. And thank you very much, because you do it very, very well. Monmouthshire's moved from not being very good at recycling to being one of the best counties of recycling. Why? Because you're doing it. And you know, people say, well, why have we got to put it in separate bags if you put it all in the back of a truck and crush it? No, we don't put it in the back of a truck and crush it. All that does is push the air out. It's the wagons that collect the residual waste, the grey bag waste, that crush it. All those vans are doing is just making a bit more room. So what we're doing is we're saying, right, because everybody's recycling so well, we're going to hope that you'll continue to do that. And we'll continue to collect residual waste on a fortnightly basis. We'll move the yellow nappy bags or incontinence bags to fortnightly, because that's a very expensive service to deliver, and we're asking people to bear with us on that. But we won't be providing the grey bags anymore. Continue to use your bag until your supply runs out, but then we'll be asking you to go back to providing your own black bags, but you'll still only be able to put 2 out a fortnight. So there should be no reason why people should change their way of dealing with recycling. We were asked to look at our employee terms and conditions. We're not going to do that. Monmouthshire is not the best payer in the world. We value our staff very highly, and they're coming along with us on this. We don't think it's fair to penalise the very staff who are providing all of the services. But where people said integrate services, the libraries, one-stop shops, anything else you can get into a building rather than several buildings, we are certainly going to be doing that. So if your one-stop shop closes, it's not disappearing, it will be in the library. We're creating community hubs so that we can cut down the cost of running our estate, rationalise some of the staffing, but enable us to keep those services going by providing them in a different way. And people said with leisure centres, why don't you run them more commercially? Well, we have had an element of commercialising of leisure centres for a while. That will be stepped up. Because again, people would far rather have the leisure centre and have fees charged for what they're doing than run the risk of losing the leisure centre. It costs us over 400,000 a year to run each leisure centre, so you know it's a major thing to keep going. So we've put the budget proposals together for next year, and as I said at the outset, this presentation is to give you the opportunity of giving us some feedback and to assess how they affect you. And if you think they're going to be adversely affecting you, to raise those particular points so that we can consider them as much as we can. I said earlier that 27% of our money comes from raising it. Obviously, council tax is the biggest lump of that. But leisure services have identified how they can raise an additional 155,000 in a full year as if they change the way that they do things. Housing and care line services, museums, castles, TICs, you see recycling for business there. At the moment, businesses pay for their trade waste to be taken away, but if they put the recycling bags out, you pay to do that, and we don't think that's fair. So we're saying to businesses, look, all of the waste that you generate, you're going to have to pay for. And we'll be getting firms to adopt roundabouts. You see that happening everywhere. It's not happening in Monmouthshire at the moment. And various highways advertising will come up. Market rents, we're not putting market rents up, but there will be additional markets that will also raise money. And the youth service have devised all sorts of courses which they're marketing, and we anticipate getting quite an additional income from that. But we still need to make efficiencies ourselves. We can't put all of that out. We've identified £500,000 worth of savings that we can still make from back office services. Some staffing changes, some transportation changes. There's all sorts of ways that we find that we can keep refining. Every time you change the way you do something, something else becomes apparent. So we're looking at that. Leisure services, in addition to the money that they're going to raise, will be altering the way that they operate, and there's savings identified there. Again, with tourism, museum services, all of these services are being looked at, redesigned to find better ways of providing the service for less cost. And we'll be working with individuals, families and communities to find different ways of supporting vulnerable people. you may have heard the term fish, which has been bandied around quite a bit. Find individual solutions here. It's services tailored to the individual rather than the individual tailoring themselves to a service. And we find in that because we're having bespoke arrangements with individuals that need that support, that we can actually do that cheaper than the alternative. So, you know, people say, oh, how can you save money out of looking after vulnerable people? You can save money by looking after them differently, but making sure that the care is still there. We're going to be changing the way we do some things. I've already mentioned quite a bit with regards to waste, but up until recently, our residual waste, the grey bag waste, if you like, went to landfill. That cost us £130 a tonne. We're now paying £59 a tonne to send it down to Cardiff and turn it into electricity. So we don't landfill anymore. The yellow bags will also go down to Cardiff because the company that was processing our clinical waste unfortunately isn't operating anymore. But again, that's going down. There's a power station down there now that's been specially built to do it. Those of you who are going to Cardiff down Rover Way rather than going to Newport Road will see that big wavy futuristic looking building. Well, that's it. And all that does is burn residual waste and generate electricity and heat for the local factories around. We'll be altering some of the things that we've been too generous, is the term really. Quite often Monmouthshire does more than the statutory minimum, and we can't afford to be out of step with the statutory minimum anymore. So a lot of things we've been doing because we were able to or we wanted to, we're now having to pull back on to get to the statutory minimum. It only puts us the same as everybody else, because that's where they are. So nobody's being disadvantaged. You're just not. You'll be losing, or they will be losing some of the advantage that they've had over other people. And we'll be going with secondary pupils from 2 to 3 miles before the subsidised transport cuts in, and there's an extra half a mile for primary. And obviously we'll be looking at safe routes to schools and various other aspects that needs to be be done with regards to other arrangements that are going to be made around school children. And we will be continuing to remove the discretionary elements of post-16 transport. That's something which was going through last year. And changing the way that some children with additional learning needs are dealt with through mainstream schooling in conjunction with their parents' requests is also going to save us some money. But it's not all about raising money and cutting money and redesigning services. There are some areas that the pressures are such that we've just got to put more money into them. And we're going to make another 900,000 available, 500 directly and 400 in grant support, in reserve support, for children's social services. And there'll be a little bit more money going into adult social care because there's some more support needed there. We will be starting any minute. Caldecott's about to start. Monmouth will be very closely behind it with the 21st Century Schools programme. That's rebuilding our secondary schools. Raglan Primary is one of the schools in that programme. That's half up, and that's on time and on budget. And with regards to funding from schools, I said earlier on about the fact that one of our priorities was education. Schools are going to have to help us. You remember those percentages I gave you. Schools are going to have to help us to do this. So we're going to hold school funding at last year's level. Schools with falling roles will get a bit less because that's how it works. But schools in general are going to pick up their own pay increases and their own additional pension contributions because it's simply the rest of the authority can't afford to support that. And schools have been very positive about this, and they're working with us about how they're going to do that. That will enable us to retain our leisure centres, retain the youth service, adult community education services, and as I said earlier, the one-stop shops and the libraries will all remain open under this plan. So you can see we've been working hard to minimising the effect on services. You will see service redesign, you will experience things being done differently, but the services will still be there. The option, and some people at some of the public meetings have said to me, well, you can't touch that, you've got to do so-and-so. Well, the answer to that, if I was being blunt, is, well, no, we don't. And unless we do it the way that we're proposing to do it, we won't be doing it at all. So surely that a change service is better than losing a service. But we're still £400,000 short of the gap that we started with. That 5.8 million, we haven't quite raised it. So we've got no option. Council tax will have to go up. Now, we worked on it rising at last year's rate, 3.95%. Clearly, that's not going to be possible with the additional cuts that we've suffered in our grant aid from Cardiff Bay. Now, 1%, as it happens, raises £400,000. Well, not quite, it's 380-something thousand, but, 400,000 will do. And as a result of that, Cabinet will be recommending to full council that council tax rises by 4.95%. Now, people always say, well, that's all very well, but how's that going to affect me? Well, if you'd like to pick your band there, just to give you an example, if you're in a band D household, and this is before you get any sort of 25% discounts or anything else that you might have the benefit of, it'll be just under £1 a week. This is the Monmouthshire County Council element of a bill. The police precept and your town and community council precepts, if they alter from last year, they might alter it a bit, but we're only talking about pence basically. So if you're in a band H household, it'll cost you an extra £2 a week. So nobody likes to see bills going up, but I hope that puts it in context for you. I'm talking about raising all this additional money, but the effect on each individual household is going to be really quite small. So we've got one more event that I'm delivering this presentation to. I'm starting to hear it in my sleep now. The consultation ends tomorrow. On the 22nd of January, we're having the debate in full council. And it says there the 27th of February, but it's actually the 26th of February, it's a Thursday, 27th of Friday. We'll be actually asking council to ratify our request that council tax goes up by 4.95%. So that's the basic situation. I hope I've illustrated where we are, where the pressures have come from, how we propose to deal with them. I'll go back to that one. And if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to see if I can answer them. We've got some officers here who might be able to expand on a few things, and the leader of the council and the chief executive at the back, I'm sure they'll be prepared to kick in. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering the situation when you're...
Hello, sorry, could I just ask you to say your name for the benefit?
Sylvia Gilbert and Action 50 Plus Monmouth. And I'm just wondering, what's happening with the one-stop shop premises? Are you selling them or renting them? Is that been decided yet?
We're doing a complete review of every building, who's in it, why they're in it, do they need to be in it, and that doesn't just apply to one-stop shops. Now in Monmouth, the likelihood is that we'll be combining them in the Rolls Hall, although there is a very strong case for the Market Hall. And that evaluation's going on as we speak. So there will be a rationalisation of those services and other services if we can get them in there, because clearly the more services we can get, and it has to be practically right, but the more services we can get in any individual building, the more we're freeing up buildings to be sold or rented off, as you say. Personally, unless there's an overwhelming case for retaining it and renting it out, I would like to see these buildings sold, because we've got to 50% match fund the 21st Century Schools programme. So if we have got a building that we don't need and the community doesn't need, because we've got a procedure now for transferring buildings to the community groups if they've got a strong case for taking them on, we will be utilising those funds to support the 21st Century Schools programme to make sure that those secondary schools are replaced.
Okay, what I'll do is I'm always scanning the room for hands going up, so I'm making a list. You've already spoken once, what I'll do is I'll come back to you in rotation. So the lady in grey, and then I've got Jenny, please. If you just press the microphone button.
Bless you.
Thank you.
A query about the library together with one-stop shop. And no objection to them being in the same building, but certainly not in the same open area. You wouldn't be thinking along those lines, would you?
There's a lot of services within one-stop shops that can easily be dealt with at one particular place. But there is a need to have rooms that you could go in and have a private conversation if that was appropriate, and that provision will be there.
But surely a library is just peaceful and quiet. You can't have people coming and going into a one-stop shop under the same roof. I mean, in the same area as the library.
Well, obviously we'll do what we can to mitigate as much of that as possible. But I hope I've made clear that the alternative is that unless we adapt, unless we put up with some inconvenience, you'll put up with the closure of that service.
Thank you.
I can't make it any plainer. That sounds a bit blunt, but that's where we are, unfortunately.
Very well.
Can I ask you to press your button, please?
Sorry, Jennifer.
Yeah, all of us do that. Don't worry. We're constantly being told off for that. Yes.
Hi, Jenny Barnes, Care. I applaud your three goals to keep our economy strong and education, but how do you look after vulnerable people when the transport's being cut for the over 19, classes are cut? I know that comes from the Welsh Assembly, but vulnerable people are being having their services cut now. You said that money was going to be invested, 900k in social services and 100k in adult social care. What does that actually mean? Where's it going? What's happening? How are you going to help the most vulnerable people?
We're going to help the most vulnerable people, as I said earlier, by tailoring the support that they need. There's been too much of let's create a service and make people use it. What we're having to do is find individual solutions wherever possible to provide that service, if necessary with help, by utilising friends, family, communities, where that is the right thing to do. In many cases it won't be, but we are looking to provide as much of the service as we possibly can, as economically as we possibly can, so that that service continues to exist. But as I say, the strapline on that, and there's a lot of backup on it, and I'm quite certain that the officers here will be able to give you full detail if you want it. But it's that strapline of fish, find individual solutions here. It's all about seeing what the problem is and creating the support services around what we can afford.
So what's that money going to be spent on?
Well, off the top of my head, I haven't got that information. You've got mandates here. That information can be provided to. It's actually in those mandates.
So I'll just jump in there, Jenny. What we'll do is... Oh, there we go. I was pressing vote yes now. Even I get it wrong. What I will do is I think there are some technical questions which are specific to in the realm of social services. Phil Main isn't going to be able to answer those, and neither would I today. What I would say to anybody that has a technical question today, if we can see you at the end, formulate what the question is exactly as you want it answered, we can then pass it on to those relevant officers who will then, with your email address, get back to you and provide you with the answer that you require if we can't do that today. So I know Peter Fox, the leader, just wants to jump in. Can I just ask somebody to press their button at the back so the camera comes on you?
Thank you. I just wanted to help Phil out and Jenny out a bit. The 900,000 is not, it's not that complicated, to be honest. As Phil said, there's already a pledge to put 500,000 in and access to 400,000 additional. And that's really to meet the growing need and requirement of the service as the demographic requirements are growing for children's services and the access of children's services. Over the years, we're finding that the budget has been struggling to meet the demand, and we've had to reprofile the budget to manage that demand. And as we go forward, we'll see the similar situation, I'm sure, with adult care as the growing over 85 population is set to double within 15 years. And I think you'll see this across Wales, where you'll see a whole reprofiling of the budget the council has to align to the need. And so we are recognising very clearly that those services are under pressure and they're going to need a realignment of funding, and the 900,000 is making some steps toward dealing with that pressure.
Just to remind you, I did know this, but I forgot that I've just been prodded again. Inside your bundle, there's a green form, or green coloured form. In that, that's where to put your question and your contact details, and then that we can ensure that our engagement team, some of whom are sat in front of you, get those questions fielded to the correct officer who can provide you with the precise answer that you require. Any more questions, please?
Thank you. My name is Adrian Edwards. I'm the clerk to 2 community councils within Monmouthshire. I'm just interested to know what Councillor Murphy, Councillor Fox and the Chief Executive see as good working partnerships with the community and town council sector. In this part of it, if the devolution of services are going to come down and you're going to expect somebody to pick up the mantle to deliver these services, the next tier of local government would be community and town councils. But to the best of my knowledge, since the discussions which took place last year, when you've done around the community, only town councils have been involved with discussions with Monmouthshire County Council. Where do you see community councils fitting into the position of service delivery if these drastic cuts are going to continue? Because we are there at this part of the round where community town councils will need to set their precept by the end of this month. But if you need to save another £10 million, obviously there's going to be further reductions in the service level. And if it comes in 2017, 2018, where the local government are going to merge, as if you listen to the press, community town councils, county councils with one another, where is the service delivery then going to take place if the service delivery in Monmouthshire is different to a service delivery in another area?
Well, obviously, it's very difficult to say what's going to happen with the Williams report and the aftermath of it. There's a lot of alternatives being put forward there, and the Minister is considering those. And we do need to see more of the colour as to what's likely to happen. But with regards to town and community councils, you'll see the bottom item there, transfer some services to other organisations. We're looking to try and get £100,000 savings from that. The way that's being done, and there's a lot of engagement with town councils just at the moment, because they're the ones who've actually come forward with proposals to assist with this. There's no reason why community councils can't take on services themselves by putting them out to the private sector if that's what they want to do. Or what a lot of this is turning out to be is town and community councils, or more likely the town councils, although some town councillors have actually said, well, can't we get help off community councils here? To which, well, yeah, if they're sharing in it, why don't you ask them? But it's paying us or to subsidise a service that perhaps we wouldn't be able to keep going. So street cleaning, we get 50% off some town councils towards a street cleaner. Caldecott, for instance, has just taken over running its public toilets. Some community councils are running their own public toilets now. There's grass cutting, estate maintenance. There's all sorts of things where town and community councils, and if you think in terms of grass cutting and things like that, community councils are doing it themselves, where they're getting local contractors in, or they're paying MCC's estates and grounds work team to actually come and do the work. So there's plenty of scope for town and community councils to assess what their priorities are, what they'd like to retain within their communities, and engage with Roger Hoggins, who's going round and did last year and is this year. Wherever somebody comes up with a request to discuss that service, he's going and examining how that service can be done. Now, I had a meeting with the trade unions on Friday last week, and they were saying, well, you know, we've got problems with Chupian staff over, and would they be able to continue to do it? No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about people identifying where they want more of a service than we're able to provide, and providing the funds from their funds. All right, it goes in their precept, and it reflects in your council tax rate, but it's giving that decision locally as to the degree of service that you require, and finding a way of paying for it.
I'll just ask Will McLean to come in from engagement.
Thank you, Councillor. It's one of the areas which, you know, Adrian, we've been working hard on. I think it would be fair to say that last year there was extensive discussions with town and community councils, but this year we have found that the towns have come forward with a greater ambition, and that's absolutely right given the size and the scale of some of the community councils we have. But that's not to say that many of the community councils haven't worked really hard. So, for instance, Raglan have determined some local priorities, they've raised precept, they've worked with us to enhance the levels of service they receive. And one of the things we've started work on before Christmas, it was a meeting in December, was to begin to put in place a very formal arrangement which looked at different levels of transfer between the county and local councils, to actually understand where people can kind of work together, what kind of models they can think about, and where responsibility lies. So that's something we're fully committed to doing. Roger's working on that document as we speak, and we'll be going back to our colleagues in the Charter Liaison Group to kind of sign that off as soon as we can.
If it's a comment, yes. This is a question. I've got already two of us waiting.
No, this is a comment. Perhaps I didn't put it over correctly. I understand the process of transfer and the delivery of devolution of service. The question I was asking was, what do you see and how do you see Monmouthshire County Council can work in partnership with community and town councils? You know, like I know, you will be rate capped on certain things. Community and town councils have got no rate capping facility on them. So on that basis, a community and town council would be able to provide or help provide a service or delivery of a service. But the issue is community and town councils don't know where they are at this moment in time. We are still in the same position community-wise as we were this time last year. This time last year, I asked the Chief Executive, could community and town councils put their precept bandings in at the end of February instead of the end of January? Some councils did. Some councils set their precept before Christmas and went in. But what I'm trying to get at is, how do you see, as the county council, working with community and town councils, and where do you see the difference in the delivery of service if the mergers take place between different principal authorities, if the priorities of each authority is different?
There's quite a few questions there.
I think...
I'm going to ask the leader of the council to come in, Peter Fox. I'm sure if Will McLean, I could definitely add something. I know that Phil Murphy wants to, so we're getting into a bit of a debate. So, to be fair to everybody, because I've got a queue building up on questions, I'll ask the leader to give a brief one, but I don't hazard you we're not going to be satisfied.
It will be brief, and if I had the perfect answer for you, Adrian, we'd all be happy. We're all part of the local government family. Which we're in your domain or in my domain, and if we are really serious about providing local sustainable services and resilient communities, we need to work very proactively together and find ways through some of the barriers, such as preset dates and different things like that. And I know that's a conundrum. That is a bit of a blocker for some people. Very clearly, we will be, as pressure comes on, we will be no doubt wanting to work a lot closer with you. We will be encouraging you in community councils to take on things we can no longer do. You can raise money the same as we are. You're just a small version of that we are, and can carry the same sort of responsibilities as us. And it's not beyond us to come together. It's not beyond community councils to come together and pool and work together in a collaborative arrangement in the way that we are expected to at county, so that you could actually have clusters of primaries, clusters of community councils working closely with the town councils. At the moment, we've got this issue where we heard at a consultation the other day where town councillors are unwilling to put their precepts up to fund some local services which other communities will benefit from. Well, we said, we'll speak to the other communities and see if they'll contribute. And they said they won't. Well, that shows that there is a need for a deeper collaborative spirit and working relationship between all levels of minor authority wherever they sit. So I think there is a role that all of us can play in where we sit in this to try and do things differently. I do not think that whatever happens in the reorganisation of local authorities, if we merge with Newport or somebody else, or we stand alone as part of a combined authority, that necessarily makes a difference to our communities. You still have the same amount of community councils in many ways. I know there may be some rationalisation around that, and there'll still be local representation who will be wanting to decide what are the local priorities. There'll be resourcing pressures, there's no doubt about it, but as I said, we don't pass any money down to community councils. You set your own precepts. What you'll be asked to do in the future, that could change. There'll be I'm sure there'll be greater expectations on community councils to do more. There may be a further future drive for a further devolution of powers to community councils and monies which flow to them. So, then that begs a whole pile of questions of how do town and community councils gear up for that? Do they become even different beasts? I think there's a lot of questions in the melting pot there at the moment, but the key thing is that we have a strong working relationship together.
Thank you, Peter. If you want to come back later, I'll let you in. I have a gentleman on the back row, please. Your question. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Mike Logan. I work on a project for young people with disabilities, and that's led me into lots of discussions with parents of young people with disabilities. In fact, I'm on a committee where those parents get together, and when we looked at the original set of budget mandates, that long document back in November, the parents were quite kind of apprehensive. There's lots of fear factors, but they found it quite hard to respond to that because there was big headings like social care, schools, transport. There was some detail, but not loads of detail. And then on this round of consultation now, we've got quite a slimline document. So really, all I can do today is report on the two big fear factors that they've got. So one is around this reduction in the budget for additional learning needs. So in the short summary, it talks about trying to meet the needs of students with additional learning needs through mainstream schools, which I'm sure many of those parents would agree with in principle. But the question is, how can that save £120,000? What is the mechanism by which that money is going to be saved? And will it be instant? Because it sounds to me like moving to more mainstream inclusive education through our mainstream schools is a long process. It's not going to lead to short-term savings, I wouldn't have thought. And then the other observation really, and it came out in a discussion earlier on about transport policy, is if there's a plan to save £29,000 on reducing concessionary support for those students with additional needs who need support to get to college, those parents are wondering, where's that going to hit? Is it going to hit them individually as families? So is that reduction in cost going to mean that they're ending up paying for that cost themselves, or is it just going to shift to another part of the council's spending? So if that school concessionary transport policy is blocked off, does it mean that adult social care is going to end up picking up the same tab for those same taxes, which is just a way of just moving money around the council? So I suppose the underlying question is, I'm not quite sure how to support those parents to respond to the various levels of consultation. If you need something by tomorrow, we can sort of send in our main thoughts, but without the detail, it's quite hard to respond in detail.
Thanks. There's two questions there. So one is the move to mainstream education for additional learning needs, and then, if I've got this correct, concessionary transport to college for additional learning needs students. Who are we both going to take both of them, or we're going to take one each?
Chipping in on the first element.
On the first element, and then Phil. So Phil, can I ask you to do the second element first?
The second element's easy. There'll be no impact in the budget proposals on transport for ALN children.
Yeah, just to pick up, I think I agree with you, and I and some of the people who may have been reading the mandates. Perhaps some of our mandates haven't been as clear and as you would have liked to, and I'm not qualified particularly to give the absolute detail on some of this. This year's mandate, for instance, of the 120,000 on ALN is about doing things different around a number of families in the North Abergavenny area, around Derry View, as I understand it, and obviously the deficiencies of changing that services are being realised, but those individuals' needs will be met, and I'm convinced and I'm told and reassured that they will be met fully in an integrated manner there. The longer term mandates, which give a larger sum going forward, is a review of several things, I understand it, of how we address out-of-county placements, look at all of our major centres of provision for this sort of thing, things like Mountain House School, which provides provision for a small number of Monmouthshire residents, but has a huge amount of money being invested in it every year, and other resource bases which deliver SEN around or ALM provisions around the county. There is a need to look at those, not to necessarily just cut money out of them, but to drive a better service, a more efficient service. And that doesn't always attach to more money. It's about sometimes having not enough money helps you to re-look at things and rethink about how you could do things in a better way. And one of the things we were challenged on by Estin was the fact that some of our outer county placements are very expensive overhead, the way we're doing it, and why aren't we doing more in county and doing things differently like that. But I am conscious that the mandate probably doesn't give the depth and the explanation you need to have meaningfully contributed as you'd wished, which I can apologise for, and we need to do something about that. But I think if we'd have had perhaps an ALN specialist or a senior education officer here, they might have been able to put more meat on the bones. But I hope that's given you a little flavour.
If we can get, at the end, if we can just have a quick chat with the engagement team, make sure that any comments or inquiries you've got come to the team, they get fielded to the relevant officer, and then you can get the precise answer, hopefully, that you require. I had a lady at the front, please. Thank you.
Sylvia Gilbert, Monmouth. I know we're all in this together and collaboration is the name of the game. In fact, I don't like the word collaboration, to be honest. It always reminds me of the war in Greece and what have you. But having said that, we're on the border, really, line of deflation. And the gentleman at the back there mentions about the precepts being set, and that's a very important point to get that in line, because as I understand that still runs on the old tuppenny rate. And we come to you as a community council to ask for money, which I think in theory you're not supposed to be able to say nay to.
We don't
So
say
either
nay to.
you rise it at county hall level, county council level, or it's an indirect way of getting money from the county council. Why don't you put it up, instead of putting it at £1 for D rate, put it up for £2? At least we'll be able to follow the money and know where to put the, no, I won't use the word blame, because as I know, we're all in this together. If it tax at 20% now, why not? I can remember in my lifetime when tax was 33 1/3. What's the matter with a bit of extra tax if you want to pay for your public services? I'm all for that. And let's see what the 1% puts towards it. The council tax rises you've mentioned and the precepts, which I've covered, voluntarism is really a saturated market. You're not going to get any much more out of voluntarism. And I like the idea of voluntarism. I think it's great. It goes back to the old ideals that people used to have years ago. But it's going to be a struggle with an ageing society. Thank you.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah, because I don't think there was actually much for.
No,
me
I
in-
just
in
like
that.
council tax is one of my hobby horses because I'm a dynamic individual. I'm interested in such exciting things. The difference between obviously income tax, which is progressive, and council tax is actually a flat rate tax. Therefore, it's regressive and therefore does not take into account anybody's ability to pay. If you're somebody on a fixed wage or a low wage, particularly if you're retired, I know every year I get the phone calls, I know exactly which streets and which age group are going to call me when they get a council tax rise because they simply can't make that bill. It's the one bill they can't afford. And what's quite pernicious about flat rate council tax is you can have one income earner in the house and you can have 5 next door and they pay the same. Therefore, it always hits the hardest on those who can least afford to pay it. And I'm always mindful when we're in this situation and raising council tax, everyone will hear me say, what about the pensioners? What about people? What's the pension state rise this year, or state pension rise this year? Because we're in danger of actually taking away anything that they've gained. So when it comes to council tax, we've got to be doubly careful that we're not impoverishing people because of its flat rate nature. Different on income tax because it's graduated on how much you earn. But I'll let our Treasury finance expert make a comment on that.
Well, yeah, we can't do anything about personal wage tax. Council tax can only go so far in that we are likely to be capped. And as Adrian said, in fact, the answer I think I ought to be giving you was the question that Adrian asked, because you put it very well. We can only go so far. We're likely to be capped. If we go any more than that, we haven't achieved anything anyway. The amount that we're hoping to save through this initiative of joint working, I know you don't like the C word, of joint working with town and community councils, is £100,000 out of 5.8 million. It's only a small part of it, but it enables communities to retain what they value, where perhaps we wouldn't be able to do it. You know, we've got a budget here of 149 million, and by the time you add a few other bits and pieces, it's up nearer 200. That sounds like an awful lot of money, but you spread it between 92,000 people, and it's not. And with the services we've got and the rurality, which means that it costs us a lot more to do things than you would if you're in a concentrated town, for instance. Blind and Gwent haven't got half the cost we've got because they're in one little strip and everybody lives there and it's easy. It's easy to do it. Torvine in particular is in that same position. So we do have to rely on town and community councils to help us out on occasions, and they do willingly. And does it go on the precept? Yes, it does. But again, it's spreading out amongst that community that values that and wants it maintained or provided in a particular way. It enables that to happen, where perhaps if it was just down to us, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Okay, I've got two people, so at the back, please, and then back to Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Crowhurst at Disability Advice Project. There's two aspects to what you're trying to do here. One is increasing fees and the other is decreasing service provision. If the fees increase, the volume will decrease. Have you worked out what is the minimum volume before uneconomic aspects will mean that a service has to be relinquished, such as library footfall, music support numbers, users of leisure services and museums? And if the service reduces, have you worked out who will lose out and what is a minimal acceptable level of service provision, such as what about the young people in transition? What about the effects of the £500,000 you're trying to make with back office services, of which there is no detail anywhere else in this document? What about the savings you're making of working with individual families to support vulnerable people? We all hear about people being visited for elderly people being visited for 5 minutes, which is of no use to anybody, and we wouldn't like any services to decrease to such a minimal level that they are of no relevance to the people they're receiving. They just tick a box. So, and the backup to that, how are you going to monitor how acceptable these provisions are that you're proposing here, so that when you come to us next year, in a time of falling revenues yet again, we will not understand the effect of this year's proposals and we'll be able to put them into a context so that we'll be able to say, well, last year you said this and you didn't achieve, or you did achieve it, and this was the effect of it. And we'll have something to go on. But at the moment, we're just giving you a subjective reaction based on our own feelings, and that isn't really sufficient. We need some sort of baseline for us to be able to tell what savings in the past have achieved in order for you to be able to prove to us that the savings you're suggesting now are relevant and achievable.
Very comprehensive and challenging. Thank you.
We do
yes.
We do monitor very closely the progress made towards meeting the targets that we set ourselves. So, for instance, last year's mandates contain a great deal of detail, and so do this year's, which are far too detailed to bring out here. But again, exactly the same offer applies. If you want more detail than I can currently provide from this lectern, just let the officers know after and it'll be provided to you, because all that information is there. But we do monitor very, very closely, and members get reports on a quarterly basis as to just what the mandates were, what we were trying to achieve, how much we've achieved. If we haven't been able to achieve it, what else are we doing to achieve that overall saving? Because at the end of the day, managers are there to manage, and if they find that they're not getting quite what they expected out of proposals, then they have to manage that situation, and if necessary come to Cabinet or even full council if it requires it to get that changed. But principally, they monitor, they react, they adapt, and that's happening all the time, always has, and is continuing to do. But for that degree of detail you wanted, it's all available, and that can be easily supplied by asking Wilfred after.
Perhaps my error was making the monitoring position the very last thing I said. The key issues are below what level of service provision will they prove unacceptable, and will you say we're going to have to wipe it out? Things like the libraries, things like the one-stop shops, things like the leisure services. At what level will the amount of money that you get fall to before you come to us and say we're going to have to close the leisure centre? What will be the minimum acceptable to you councillors who are running this place?
Okay, I'll ask Peter Fox to come in and
Yeah,
answer.
thank you, Tony. Yeah, it's a real good and it's a challenging point. I think that's a dilemma that we politicians are going to have to get to, because at the moment, okay, we may think it's rightly or wrongly, we're trying to retain services and keep them going. But I accept your challenge that when do we believe we can't protect it anymore, and when do we make the call of which one do we turn off and focus that resource into preserving another one? And making a choice between, is it a library more valuable than additional money into social care, or is it a leisure centre more valuable than cutting the, and we cut the ISB into schools to support that. And I think that is a real challenge for us. And we, as politicians, I will have to make that call at some point, because I don't think that the funding situation is going to allow us to maintain and keep doing things as we are. I think we're already accepting that some services that we deliver won't be as good as we would want them to be. In fact, they're going to diminish. We don't want to stop them yet, because once you stop something and you remove the resource base which can drive that, you're never going to get it back. It's gone. And our focus will be somewhere else, and something precious will be lost. So the important thing for us is trying to walk that line as long as we can at the moment. But it's getting very difficult, because many services we have are being provided or managed by 1 or 2 staff, and it's stretched. What the minimum level is of access to some service before you say that's no good is a big call, because for the 2 or 3 people who might be using it, it might be absolutely fundamental to the well-being of their life. And just because somebody might want to swim regularly and think that's more important, that's not necessarily everybody's view. And that's the conundrum we're faced with. We have to take soundings from people like yourselves to find out what is precious to you and what really does make the noise and make the waves. And it's that and this sort of input which gives us the direction in many ways to make those judgment calls. But I accept your challenge, Tony, that perhaps we haven't got the, some of the, or perhaps we need to strive for giving you some deeper analysis of what the effects have been of our previous decisions, so that you can help us in that decision of saying, well, don't you really think now, we can accept the situation, and we accept you might have to turn something off. So I think perhaps we need to use this forum and other forums like it, perhaps in the future, in an even more constructive and meaningful way.
I think if I could just add to that, Chair, that if I can take you back to the beginning of the presentation when I said that we've got to find better ways of doing things. We keep on finding better ways of doing things. We're constantly examining, reinventing, and every time you find a different way of providing a service, up to now we've been able to see another way of progressing that journey. And again, that makes it very difficult to answer direct questions like we've just had from you, Tony, because I don't know what the answer to that is yet. Officers keep innovating, they keep on finding ways of doing it. But as I also said as part of the early part of my presentation, we will get to the stage where it will just straight come down to money. And if the amount of money available is less than the cost of running that service, as reinvented as many times as we can do it, well then certainly that is the point at which the decisions that Peter was talking about will have to be made.
Thank you. Jenny, I was going to ask you, but I have been reminded I didn't see somebody's hand up, so I'll just go to the front room and I will come back to you because you had a question. Thank you.
I just want to say 2 points. I think we could do a lot of saving by the speed bumps off the road. In upgrade, there's speed bumps that's on the road, and there's a lot of residents that's complaining about it upgrading. And I'm not just saying that, I'm saying that it's a disabled point of view, because there are people that got poor eyesight. So instead of thinking the safety aspect, that it's best to be safe than sorry. And the second point is, And when you say about green bags, then you're going to change them. Are you going to do it weekly instead of fortnightly? Because the law residents in my street that are complaining. They say, just get it sorted. But at the end of the day, I say it's the council, and I think, but then, is it going to be weekly or is it still going to be fortnightly?
It'll still be as it is now.
Right.
The only change will be that the yellow bags are the change. Everything else stays the same. The yellow bags will go to fortnightly to be collected with the residual waste instead of having a separate collection. Because to say the people who were processing that no longer exist, so it's going to be too expensive for us to collect it separately to just throw it with the residual waste. Yeah. What we need to do is cut out that expense and collect it with the residual waste. As for speed bumps and things like that, I'd like to see all speed bumps go. I must admit, I was in Egypt over Christmas, and every 100 yards, even on dual carriageways, there's speed bumps so high every vehicle had to stop, climb over them and carry on again. You haven't seen speed bumps like they've got there, I can promise you that. It's absolutely horrendous. And if they ran out of tarmac, they dug a hole and they left the trench there. So you had to climb down into the trench. Nightmare.
Thank you. Jenny, please.
You said that you were coming to the end of your consultations on budgets, and we know that you've been discussing it a lot of the time with other people like us over the last couple of months. Has anything changed from your initial talk about what the council was going to do from now? In other words, has the consultation made any difference?
Yes.
Or will it make any difference?
It has done. We've already altered some of the mandates, some of the proposals. We've had to totally rethink because people have pointed out to us where it doesn't work. If I can quote you last year, simply because I know what the figures are. Last year we had 27 usable ideas, a lot of which we were actually progressing but hadn't progressed as much as people wanted. 18 were brand new ideas pointing in a way that we hadn't considered, and those ideas, because there's lead-in times for these things, those ideas are forming part of the discussions we're having for the medium-term financial plan. That's that extra 10 million, you know, and those ideas are helping us formulate ways we can do that. One example that came up time and time again last year was, why don't you have a Monmouthshire lottery? Well, we've done a lot of preparation work on that, and that's actually in a position where it may well be rolled out soon. So yes, we do listen, we do alter the mandates. Where you point out to us things that just plain won't work, we have a look to see if we agree that they won't work, or whether we need to re-examine our thoughts in the light of that and think, well, yeah, hang on a minute, that might not work, but if we do it this way, it will. So yes, we do. I'm
very relieved about that, because I'd hate to think you were ticking boxes and we were all wasting our time.
Well, to be honest, it
isn't.
I can tell you that now, if we didn't do that, I wouldn't go out and do it, because I would be totally wasting my time.
Right, thank you.
Can I add briefly that I think what's been really noticeable this year, it's been less people have been getting involved in the engagement events, and which was quite surprising. I think people who, you know, we underestimate sometimes our communities. Our communities really understand the pressure we're in, and you know, to be honest, most of us we've been putting a lot of thinking into this. Lots of us have come up with the same ideas, public or in the council itself. You know, there aren't an exhaustible pile of answers to some of these conundrums. We fall on one now and again. What I've been really impressed about is, and what the consultation's given me, is the confidence to push ahead with certain things. You know, the acceptance that council tax should go up, you know, the need for it. You know, that's a challenging one for politicians. Believe me, that's a really big decision because it affects everybody. But seeing and hearing our communities saying, we can do this, we accept that, or we accept this, or we understand why you're doing that. That is massively beneficial to us. That helps us form future policy. So just because we might not, because somebody comes up with a bright idea to put something in place, we don't adopt it, doesn't mean say that consultation wasn't valid. Your input, your challenge, your, you know, your reassurance, and all of those things are absolutely key to helping us drive our way forward. This isn't just about consultation. We have certain elements which we have to call consultation. This is about engagement, and it's about talking with people in a long conversation. And that starts earlier in the year, and it has different stages that it goes through. And everybody contributing helps mould that end position. Very difficult to define just how you've done that, but you have, believe me.
Okay, are there any other questions from anybody? I have one at the back. I've got two. Okay, I think we're running out. Okay, if I could take the gentleman at the back, please.
Could be touchy subject. Go on. Oh. Could be a touchy subject, so tell me to shut up if you like. The money for Morrison's supermarket.
Yeah.
14.7 million or whatever it is. Whether you are likely to see it, I know it won't solve the problems, but and how much of that is already accounted for?
I can tell you. I can tell you that currently deposited with our solicitors, and we are getting the interest of it before you ask, is 10% of the money. I won't give away the actual figure, but it's not far off what you said. The rest of that money has to be paid by the end of June 2016.
Yeah.
Contractually, we have no reason to believe that they won't pay it by then. In fact, we've got no reason to believe that they won't have already started work by then, despite the news this morning about closing stores and this, that and the other. Yeah. We are assured by Morrison's that they will be building Abergavenny when they're good and ready to do it.
Oh.
Okay, Delia, you've got your question.
Yes, thank you.
The only other question.
I think the other bit of Alan...
A little bit of addition to that.
So the other bit of
when you get the 14.7 million, how much is actually accounted for? Pay for other things.
It'll go in. All asset disposals are ring fenced for the 21st Century Schools project. Will go into that fund.
Please, your question.
Thank you. It's just three things I'd like to just mention. And the point that was raised before by Sylvia about volunteers, I would like to reinforce that because I personally, we've heard such a lot about David Cameron's Big Society, and it all sounds very nice. But I personally have been approached in this last 12 months on a number of occasions to take on extra volunteer responsibilities, and I've also been approached on several occasions to please approach my group to ask for volunteers. So, and I think that it's reaching saturation point, and I just wanted to kind of reinforce that because there's soon not going to be many people left to volunteer, and yet I see in what you're saying that volunteers are going to be more and more required, and yet where are they going to come from? The second point is the perennial toilets. I've had complaints from a couple of my members saying that the Abergavenny market toilets have been closed at 4 o'clock on a market day. I don't know whether, I don't know, but I was surprised to hear that, and I just wondered what you had to say about it. And finally, the other point I'd like to make is about the elderly, and this is a very, where I really get concerned, is because the elderly are not going to go away. They're getting a bigger and bigger issue. There's more and more of them. I'm one of them, of course, and we're all going to be there eventually. It's no good these young politicians saying it's this, that, and the other about the elderly. Yes, I'm not flattering you, but the thing is, it's a time bomb actually, and these older people are requiring more and more services from the social services, from the health service, etc., etc., and I can't see that there's any consideration being given to that. You're dealing with the issues of what the requirements are today, but what about the requirements tomorrow, next year, etc.? They're just ballooning.
Well,
I'll let you get Phil.
We are very, very conscious of the demographics. The Institute of Fiscal Studies came out last year with some figures, and there'll be over 600 retired people for every 1,000 in work in Monmouthshire by 2030, isn't it? 2031. You know, it's a frightening prospect. The over 85 population will grow dramatically. We know all about that. Our social services teams are very aware in building their mandates and looking forward into the medium-term financial plan of the pressures that are coming along there, and they are very severe. We know about them, and we'll deal with them the best we can, and that's what really gives rise to that comment I made earlier about cutting the amount of money that's going to local authorities to the stage where we won't be able to do the work that prevents the NHS having to pick up the pieces. And that's a major concern to us, something we're very, very aware of. As regards volunteers, we've got over 240 tourism volunteers. We've got quite a healthy bank of volunteers at the moment. I understand what you're saying about people are going to run out, but it isn't really that much of a problem at the moment. And in fact, we were having this discussion at the what we call the People Board this morning, and you know there are various things. I mean, Lloyds Bank, for instance, have got a fabulous scheme where each member's staff is given 10 hours a week to do voluntary service. You know, you can do things like that, which extends the scope. So it isn't just, oh, please, can you come and help us? You know, there are initiatives out there that can help in that regard. But to repeat a promise we made to the unions on Friday, we're not going to use volunteers to replace people who are in employment. We will use volunteers to supplement the service to enable it to continue.
Thanks, Delia. I mean, just to say that the ticking bomb that you talk about. Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you could just touch the button a minute off. Yeah. The ticking bomb that you talk about, we've already addressed, and you know, Will, you're going to have to correct me on this one. There's that frightening statistic that says by 2030, just in Monmouthshire, we would have to find an extra 25 million or thereabouts for adult social care, just on its own. If you don't find that, the NHS will break, quite frankly, because it's that horrible phrase, bed blocking. It's delayed discharge of care, where the care isn't available actually at the local level, and that's us. We're aware of that. Once the government, or any UK government, has balanced the books, or the current account, or the deficit, as you'll hear it be called, around about 2018, 2020, your next challenge by 2030 is to fund an ageing population. Believe me, you might think I'm a young councillor, I'm just behind you. Well, it feels like it, because someone's got to fund a pension. Now, that's another challenge that's there. So the challenges are all there for us. We're well aware of that. What I would say is please be mindful, because I'm looking at the audience here today, and you know there are lots of people who are not here today, and there's a certain demographic that would not be here today at this time of day because they're in work. And it's their voice also that, you know, because they are going to have the burden of paying for it. And we must be mindful of that. Where is local government finance or government finance going, you know, in the next few decades, is that more and more is going to be funneled into paying for an ageing society, which means actually more people are paying in for less people to actually get the benefit of it. And for the young generation today in their 20s,
Less people are paying in for more people to receive the service.
oh, wait, yeah, you are right. I've got it wrong. Hold on. I've got it noted.
Stand
The
to be
working,
corrected.
right. More and more of the working population.
It's a good job somebody's awake.
Yeah. Sorry, more and more of the working population we're paying more and more in taxes and council tax, and they will not be recipients of those services. That's how it works, yeah.
That's life.
So we must be mindful of that at all time, and that's going to be a big challenge to explain that and for young generations to accept that burden. That's not going to be easy, but we're aware of it already. And the planning's already started on that one. But I know Peter wants. Can I just say on volunteers? Sorry, you're quite right. You may well be in certain sections, in certain walks of life, in certain interests. You could be at saturation point in volunteering. Where it doesn't appear that we're short of volunteering is in younger age groups when it comes to things on environmental groups or civic community groups. There seems to be no shortage of young people willing to muck in and literally get their hands dirty, something they want to be doing something. Also maybe in the realms of museums, maybe in the realms of something cultural. So it depends which type of groups of people you're talking about. I accept, you might well be right in your experience, and I know that Sylvia said the same thing, we could be at saturation point. I know when it comes to things such as environmental issues and food growing, in particular, there are no shortage of volunteers at the moment. They are coming out of the woodwork. Peter.
Yeah, I can't add too much more what's been said. The first thing, though, I thought I was the young councillor. Clearly young. I am. I think you are right on. Well, the big point you made is a massive one, and it's one I don't think any of us can even start comprehending of how we're going to manage it. And it's huge, the growing expectation that's coming. I suppose some of the mandates that we got this year at the moment is trying to find ways that how can we make people, when they do get in those latter stages of their life, so much better, and how can we do things in a different way for our communities, recast our communities in many ways, and revitalise some of that community spirit which used to be there, and perhaps we can at least manage some of the elements of the needs of individuals in that way. But there is going to be a need for a huge amount of money. We talked about earlier about putting extra money to meet the need for children's services. In the same way, we're going to have to reprofile the budget, as I said earlier, to meet that growing need. And when that money gets redirected, it's coming out of something massive somewhere else. And then we'll have a whole pile of people saying, why have you stopped doing that? Well, because we've had to do this. And this is a real conundrum. And there will be a requirement for us to use more and more people if they're willing. I agree with you. I think the people like yourselves who are the obvious volunteers, you're at saturation point because you keep being asked. And you keep being asked, and because you're good people, you keep saying yes, and you keep saying yes, and it's a big pressure on you all, and on lots of us. We all do that sort of thing. But we've got to work harder in identifying other people who can work with us, and that's part of what we talk about, realising what the terminology social capital. The people out there in our community who have something to offer and want to offer it. We need to identify those people and work with them. We're seeing a couple of good examples of that in Abergavenny now and in Sevenside, where we're taking forward this what we call a total place, and empowering our communities. And we've got town teams, for instance, which are being created, who are volunteers, people coming together from all ages, coming together because they want to add some value to the community, and they're actually doing that. And that's the same in Abergavenny. Indeed, one of those people came to me only the other day and saying, Peter, how can we get even deeper involved? How can you devolve money to us so we can actually start spending it in our community? So people really keen to get motivated and do stuff. But I think what we've got to do is tap into them, identify them. There are 90-odd thousand people in Monmouthshire, and if we talk about the 600 of those are retired in every 1,000, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of expertise who've got far better experience than us in many ways, which we need to tap into, because I believe some of those people will have some of the answers to some of the things we need to grapple with.
Did you want to make a response?
Cordelia, I'm going to I don't. Oh, on toilets. No, no. I'm looking around because I'm just wondering: is it Abergavenny Town Council or is it Monmouthshire? I honestly don't know the answer. Can we be excused to? Very wrong. Can I ask that if you could put that question on here, and the engagement team will, at your convenience, will. Provide the answer for you. I'm not certain who's running it now because I know there's been some transfer, hasn't there, somewhere in Abergavenny, but I'm not. Or was it Monmouth?
I can't remember which one went and which one didn't.
Okay.
Is there anything more?
I think yes, I know. I'm going to bring it to a close. I know Adrian wants to come back in, so I'm going to invite Adrian as last, unless there's anybody else has got a question. No.
Mine's a very brief one. After Adrian.
Please.
After Adrian. Might be a bit longer. Mine's brief.
I'll let you go. You're brief. I'll let you go first.
Mine is very brief. You're giving the volunteers a double whammy because not only are they giving their time and their noose, they're actually paying to arrive here to give it. And I think that's very unfair for one who's done it for over 40 years. For Nick's.
Adrian, can I ask you to have the last say? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm not expecting an answer. This is an observation. In relation to the proposed or what's going to happen with the new pool in Monmouth, can I make an observation? Peter has made reference to leisure centres, costs, running, etc. Please consider building something which can be used for competition purpose. Please do not consider building something which is just leisure. If you just build it for leisure and you have 10 or 15 people in there on a Saturday morning, and then you have 10 or 15 people there on a Sunday morning paying £3.50 an hour to swim, that's a disaster. You're going to waste money. Build something to a minimum of 6 lanes or 8 lanes with 500 people on the balcony. You will make £3,000 to £4,000 on a weekend. You will attract competition to the pool, not only from Monmouthshire, South East Wales, but you'll also attract competition from Gloucestershire and South Herefordshire. If the venue is a nice venue with appropriate seating, it will pay for itself. But if you just build it as a leisure pool, you're going to throw good money after bad.
Yeah, and can I take that? Yeah. Adrian, we won't. It's not just about a leisure pool. What we've got there is currently a leisure pool because it's only 20 metre. We know that, and it was on the way out anyway. But and don't forget, we've got a school that needs this. This is an educational need for this facility. We are committed to put in a facility. At the moment, that is looking around a 4-lane, 25 metre pool, which it doesn't bar competition, but I can see the desirability of 6 lanes. However, we have to look at everything in the context of money, and we have asked, because there is a big case that is trying to argue for additional lanes to do exactly what you were saying. So there's other things can come there. And at the moment, I know that the project board that is overseeing all these sorts of things connected with the schools will be awaiting a business case, which actually can try, and we'll see if it can do what you just suggested. Can a business case come together which warrants investing more of your money into those additional lanes? Because that's the reality is, extra £2, £3, £4 million is your money. And it's money which we might be funding another school with or going toward doing something else with. So it's not a light decision. It may seem on the top of a £30 million project to build a new school, chuck a couple more £1 million in it, doesn't sound a big deal. But when you start analysing that money down, that's big, serious things. So we have to be sure, absolutely sure, that a business case that can generate income, which can service additional borrowing, to purchase those additional capacity, that has to stack up and convince us before politicians will be able to commit in such a tight time to that.
Could I just...
You can, Adrian, but...
I know the time is going on and I've got somewhere else to be as well. But in relation to that, if it's a business case going to be drawn up, firstly, as the project team approach Swim Wales. Secondly, as the project team approach Welsh Sport for any funding in relation to that, because to the best of my knowledge, the project team has not approached Swim Wales. And where you're going about volunteering, I volunteer. I spend all my weekends stood on a poolside, so I know exactly what's going on with this.
I'm expecting our leisure team and the supporters of what you're saying to have done the in-depth. If they want to create a business case which convinces us, they need to speak to those people who you're talking to, and I would hope they have done. Otherwise, they're not going to convince us.
There's a business case actually being presented to the finance team. They've raised some queries. There was going to be a meeting to present it to us on Friday afternoon. As a result of those queries and further detail, that meeting has been put on to Friday morning of next week. So we will hear all about their proposals, and they are certainly been working along the lines you've been looking at.
Thank you. That's the end. Thank you very much all for coming. I know some of you were here this morning as well, so it's been a bit of a marathon day. I hope you found it useful and that you feel that you are being listened to and engaged. Response forms, if you want to put them in, our engagement team are here, and any questions that you have, they'll ensure that those answers are back to you precisely. Thank you.